I didn't say anything right away. I just stood in the hallway with a laundry basket in my arms and my daughter's voice still hanging in the air like something that hadn't finished falling yet. She had said it so casually, the way you'd mention the weather or remind someone to pick up milk. "Mom, when his parents visit, it might be better if you just stay in your room. It's easier that way." I nodded. I don't know why I nodded. Maybe because I'd been nodding for 2 years by then, and it had become the only thing I knew how to do. Let me go back to the beginning. Not the real beginning that would take all day, but the beginning that matters. My husband passed away in the spring of 2019. 38 years we were together, and then one Tuesday morning, he was gone. Heart attack. No warning, no goodbye, no time to say any of the 1,000 things I'd been meaning to say. Just gone. I was 63 years old, alone in the house where we'd raised our children, and I had absolutely no idea what to do with myself. My daughter called every day that first month. She drove up on weekends. She brought food I didn't eat and sat beside me on the couch while I stared at nothing. She was good to me then. I want to be clear about that because the story I'm telling now isn't the whole of who she is. She was good to me when I needed her most, and I haven't forgotten that. But grief does something to a house. It gets into the walls. 6 months after my husband died, I would walk from the kitchen to the living room and feel the absence of him so sharply it was almost physical. The house was too big. The silence was too loud. I started leaving the television on just to fill the rooms with voices. My daughter was the one who first brought it up. She and her husband had bought a place 2 years earlier, a colonial in a suburb outside of Columbus, 4 bedrooms, good schools, a finished basement. They had 1 child, my grandson, who had just turned 2. She was working part-time as a dental hygienist. Her husband worked long hours in sales. "We have the room," she said. "And honestly, Mom, I worry about you being there alone." I told her I was fine. She called again the following week. "Just think about it." I thought about it. I thought about it for 3 months. I walked through every room of my house and tried to imagine staying. I sat at the kitchen table where my husband and I had eaten breakfast for 38 years and tried to picture doing it alone for the next 20. I thought about my daughter's voice on the phone and how she'd said, "We need you here," and how much I had wanted to believe that was true. I sold the house in February. Didn't get quite what I'd hoped for, but it was a fair price for the market. I packed what mattered, my clothes, my books, the quilt my mother made, my husband's old armchair that I refused to leave behind, and I moved into the guest room on the 2nd floor of my daughter's house. The first few weeks were better than I expected. I helped with the cooking. I played with my grandson in the afternoons. I did the grocery runs because I had the time and the car, and it seemed like the obvious contribution. My daughter would come home from her shifts and there would be dinner on the stove and a clean kitchen and a bathed toddler in pajamas, and she would hug me and say, "I don't know what we'd do without you." I won't pretend I didn't love hearing that. My son-in-law was pleasant enough at first. He worked irregular hours out the door by 7, sometimes not back until 8 or 9 at night. We didn't interact much. He'd come in, eat whatever I'd made or heat up leftovers, watch some television, go to bed. On weekends, he'd play with my grandson and mow the lawn and spend time with my daughter. I stayed out of their way. I tried to find the line between helpful and intrusive and stay firmly on the right side of it. I'm not sure when things shifted. It wasn't one moment. It was more like the tide. You don't notice it coming in until the water is at your feet. The first thing was the chair. My husband's armchair, the brown leather one I'd packed so carefully, had been in my room those first few weeks. But the room was small, and the chair took up the corner near the window, and one afternoon I came home from a walk to find it had been moved to the basement. My daughter said they needed the space for a changing table. My grandson was 3 by then, and well past needing a changing table. I didn't point that out. I just went down to the basement and sat in the chair for a long time. Then it was the schedule. My daughter started leaving a kind of informal list on the refrigerator. Not my name on it, nothing official, just a whiteboard with the week's activities. But written in among the dentist appointments and the soccer practice and the date nights was my grandson's schedule, and next to it, every single day, Grandma watch Oliver. Not a question, not could you. Just a statement, like sunrise or sunset, a fact of nature. I watched my grandson because I loved him. I want to say that first. He was the best part of my days. But watching him had become a full-time job. Not the occasional afternoon I had imagined. Not the whenever you're free, Mom, my daughter had described on the phone before I moved in. Every weekday morning, my daughter left for work at 8, and my son-in-law left at 7. And my grandson was mine until my daughter returned, which was sometimes 2 o'clock and sometimes 4 o'clock, and sometimes on the days she had errands or stopped somewhere after work close to 6. 8 hours, 10 hours sometimes. A 3-year-old, which anyone who has raised children knows is a particular kind of marathon, joyful and exhausting in equal measure. I was 65 by then. My back had been bothering me for years, 2 compressed discs, the doctor had told me. The kind of thing that doesn't really go away, only gets managed. Lifting my grandson, chasing him through the yard, getting down on the floor to build block towers and then getting back up again, it was wearing on me in ways I was trying not to admit. I started mentioning it, gently, at first. I might need a slower day tomorrow, sweetheart. My back is flaring up, my daughter would say. Of course, Mom. And then the morning would come and she'd be out the door, and my grandson would be standing in the kitchen in his pajamas, looking up at me with those eyes. And what was I supposed to do? I asked once if they had thought about a part-time daycare. Just a few days a week, I said. Just enough to give me some recovery time. My son-in-law looked at me over his coffee cup and said they'd looked into it and the prices were outrageous. He said it like that settled something. Then he went back to his phone. I started noticing other things after that. The way my daughter would ask, without quite asking, if I could also do the grocery run on my way back from my morning walk. The way her husband would come in and leave his dishes in the sink even when I was standing right there at the counter, as if the expectation of my cleaning them was so embedded he didn't even notice he was doing it. The way the guest bathroom, my bathroom, had become a kind of storage room for overflow shampoos and extra toilet paper and a treadmill that had never been assembled, so that I had to navigate around boxes just to get to the shower. Small things, each one small on its own, but they accumulate, small things. They pile up quietly in the corner of a room until one day you turn around and they're blocking the door. The morning it came to a head was a Thursday in October. I had been up since 5 with a back spasm that kept me awake most of the night. I'd taken my medication and put the heating pad on, and by 7, I was feeling somewhat better, but not good. My son-in-law came downstairs, poured his coffee, and without looking up from his phone said, "My parents are coming this weekend. They'll be in the guest room, so you'll need to be on the pull-out in the basement Friday and Saturday night." I stood very still. He wasn't asking. He had already decided. His parents needed the room. My room and I would sleep on the pull-out sofa in the basement. The same basement where my husband's chair sat in the corner gathering dust, because guests mattered more than I did. I was not a guest. I was furniture. You rearrange furniture to accommodate guests. I said, "I don't think I can sleep on the pull-out with my back the way it is." He shrugged. Actually shrugged. "There's the couch in the den." I said nothing. I started the coffee for myself and stood at the kitchen window looking at the backyard. My grandson came downstairs 20 minutes later and wrapped his arms around my legs and said, "Morning, Grandma." And I held on to the top of his head for a moment longer than usual. My daughter came down after that. I told her about the weekend. She looked uncomfortable. She said, "It's just 2 nights, Mom." I said, "I know. I watched Oliver that day. We made pancakes for breakfast and played in the yard and read 4 books before his nap. When he went down at 1 o'clock, I sat in the kitchen and looked at the whiteboard on the refrigerator. Grandma, watch Oliver, written like a law, like something that had always been true and would always be true. I thought about my house, the one I sold, the kitchen table where my husband and I used to sit on Sunday mornings with the paper and coffee, not even talking, just being together in the same quiet. I had sold that table along with the house. I thought I was moving towards something. I was starting to understand I had only moved away. That evening, my daughter was home early. I had made dinner, roast chicken, the recipe her grandmother taught me, the one she'd asked for a dozen times over the years. We sat at the table, the three of us, my grandson in his booster seat dropping pieces of chicken on the floor, and I listened to my daughter and her husband talk about his parents' visit, and the restaurants they were thinking about, and the new patio furniture they'd priced online. And I thought, I am a paid employee who does not get paid. I thought, I sold my house for this chair at this table where I am invisible. After dinner, I washed the dishes. My son-in-law had gone to the living room. My daughter was giving Oliver his bath. I stood at the sink and washed each dish slowly and thought about what I wanted to say and how to say it. I dried my hands. I walked to the living room doorway. I said, I need to talk to you both about something. He looked up from the television. My daughter came down a few minutes later with Oliver in her arms, still damp from his bath, smelling like lavender soap. I said it as clearly as I could. I said that I loved them, and I loved my grandson more than I could say, and that I had been grateful for the chance to be close to them these past 2 years. But I said that things had changed from what I understood when I moved in. I said I had become the full-time childcare, the housekeeper, the cook, and the flexible fixture that got rearranged whenever the actual family needed the space. I said my back was in genuine pain, and I needed it taken seriously. I said I needed my room to be mine, not a guest room I occupied between visits. My daughter's face was complicated. She looked sorry and defensive in the same expression, the way people do when they know you're right but aren't ready to say so. My son-in-law said, "We give you a free place to live." I looked at him. I had known this was what he thought. I had suspected it for a long time. The roof overhead as payment in full for everything I gave. Room and board in exchange for my labor and my time and my body and my back. I said, "That's not what I agreed to when I came here." He said, "Then maybe this isn't the right situation for you." He said it the way you say it when you want someone to hear the door opening. He said it to end the conversation, not to have one. I said, "I think you might be right." He wasn't expecting that. My daughter looked up quickly. Oliver reached out and patted my arm with his small hand, not understanding anything, just wanting to touch someone. I went upstairs. I sat in my room, for these last nights, and I looked around at what I had brought with me from my old life. The quilt, my books, the framed photograph of my husband and me at the Grand Canyon, 1997. Both of us sunburned and laughing. I had fit 38 years of a life into one room and called it a fresh start. I called my friend Carol that night. We had known each other since our children were in elementary school together, Carol and I, and she was the kind of person who answered the phone even at 10 at night and didn't ask you to explain yourself before she'd decided to help. "I think I need to find my own place," I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I've been waiting for you to say that." She had a friend who was renting out the in-law suite attached to her house, separate entrance, kitchenette, a little sunroom off the back. Nothing big, but mine. Carol had mentioned it to me once, months ago, and I had said I was fine. I wasn't fine. I told my daughter the following morning. We sat at the kitchen table, just the two of us, Oliver still asleep. I told her I had found a place and that I would be moving at the end of the month. I told her I wasn't leaving because I didn't love her or my grandson. I told her I was leaving because I needed to be somewhere I was a person and not a convenience. She cried. I expected that. I held her hand across the table and let her cry. She said, "I didn't know you felt this way." I thought about all the times I had nodded when I should have spoken, all the mornings I had looked at the whiteboard and said nothing, all the evenings I had washed dishes in a house where no one saw me doing it because I had made myself so reliably present that I had become invisible. I said, "I should have said it sooner. That's on me." She asked if she had done something wrong. I said it wasn't one thing. I said it was the slow accumulation of being treated like a resource instead of a mother, and that I didn't think she always meant to do it, but it had happened anyway, and I had let it happen, and now I needed to stop. She nodded. She looked young, sitting there. She looked like herself at 16, when she'd made a mistake and knew it and didn't know what to do with that knowledge. I loved her completely. That had never changed. Love doesn't require you to disappear into it. Her husband said very little to me for the rest of the month. Some mornings he was gone before I came downstairs. That was fine. I spent my last weeks there, being fully present in the ways that mattered, reading to my grandson, taking long, slow walks in the mornings when my back allowed it, calling Carol and looking at photos of the sunroom and planning what I would put in it. I found a small painting at a thrift shop in late October, a watercolor of the ocean, blues and greens, very peaceful. I bought it for $11. I pictured where I would hang it in the sunroom, the light coming in through the south-facing window in the afternoons. Moving day was the first Saturday in November. Carol came with her car. My daughter helped me pack, quiet but present, handing me things carefully, wrapping my husband's framed photo in a sweater so the glass wouldn't break. My son-in-law watched football in the other room. My grandson sat on the end of my bed and watched me with serious eyes. "Are you going somewhere?" he asked. "I'm going to my own house," I said. "Just like you have your house." He thought about that. "Will you still come?" "Every week," I said. And I meant it. He climbed down off the bed and went to find his toy trucks, satisfied. Children are sometimes the only honest philosophers. The sunroom had 3 windows, east-facing and south-facing, which meant morning light and afternoon light, which was more light than I'd had in 2 years. I put the painting of the ocean on the wall across from the small sofa. I set my husband's armchair near the south window, where it belonged, where I could sit in it in the afternoons with a book and feel the warmth coming through the glass. I put the quilt on the bed. I put my books on the shelf in order, the way I liked them. I made myself a cup of tea and stood in the kitchenette and listened to the quiet of a space that was mine. There is a particular kind of stillness that comes with having your own walls around you. Not silence. Silence can be lonely, but stillness. The stillness of a space that is organized around your own life and nobody else's. I had forgotten what it felt like. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed it until I had it back. Carol came by that evening with soup and bread, and we sat in the sunroom and talked until 9 o'clock. She asked how I felt. I thought about the question honestly. I felt tired in the good way, the way you feel after finishing something hard. I felt light in a way I hadn't in years. I felt, for the first time since I sold my house, like I was somewhere I was supposed to be. My back was still troublesome. That wouldn't change overnight, but I had a doctor's appointment the following week and a referral to a physical therapist and a heating pad and an armchair that was comfortable and mine. And for the first time in 2 years, I was not dreading morning. I see my grandson every Saturday now. We go to the library or the park, or sometimes just to the bakery downtown where they let him pick out exactly 1 cookie, which he takes very seriously. He's 4.5 and funny and asking questions about everything all the time, and I love him without reservation. My daughter and I are finding our way back to each other. It takes time. She called me last week, not to ask me to do anything, just to talk. We talked for 40 minutes about nothing in particular. It was the best conversation we'd had in years. I am not bitter. I want to say that clearly. I made choices, and I let things happen that I should have addressed, and I own that. I stayed in a situation long past the point where I should have spoken up, and I stayed because I was afraid of seeming ungrateful, afraid of causing conflict, afraid that if I asked for something for myself, the love would be conditional on my not asking. That fear is what costs us the most. Not the people who take advantage of it, though they carry their own accounting. The fear itself is what we give away when we stay quiet. I raised my daughter to know her own worth. I taught her to ask for what she needed and not apologize for needing it. Somewhere along the way, I forgot to keep that lesson for myself. I am 67 years old. I have a sunroom with morning light. I have a quilt my mother made and my husband's armchair and a watercolor painting of the ocean that cost $11 and looks like it belongs exactly where it is. I have a Saturday with my grandson, regular as the weeks themselves. I have Carol, who answers the phone at 10 at night. I have my own key and my own door and my own quiet. That is not a small life. That is not a diminished one. That is a life that belongs to me, and I will not forget again what it costs when you give it away piece by piece to people who have learned to expect the pieces. You raised your children. You gave them your best years and your best self, and everything you had to give. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to say, I cannot do this today. My back hurts. I am tired. I need my room. I need my quiet. I need to be a person and not a solution to someone else's schedule. You are not what you contribute to their convenience. You are not the labor they don't have to pay for. You are not the gap they fill with your presence and your energy and your willingness. You are the woman who raised them. You are someone's mother. You are someone's grandmother. You are someone's friend, someone's memory, someone who has lived a whole life with a whole heart and earned every right to the rest of it. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Don't let the quiet accumulation of small things become the sum of who you are. You are not just a solution. You are not just convenient. You are not just taking up space. You are here, and you have every right to be.